Seriously, this Virginia Woolf woman must be around here somewhere. Why don't you try the shrubberies? She might be there. Look, she's got to be somewhere because these people were really scared of her. I would like to meet her. Just keep going. Keep going. Keep looking. I know there's lots of people down here. I know. She's got to be here somewhere. Okay? Just keep looking. I'm sure she's not upstairs. I'm sure she's not upstairs. I'm sure she's down here somewhere. If she's that scary, she's not upstairs. Okay? Go keep looking. Okay? Don't come back until you've found her. Hello. Hello. So, I'm back with a play. Yes. And this play, very interesting. The Milwaukee Family Players, though, honestly, they are getting sick of these small casts. Like, we need something big like Shakespeare again because they're getting bored and restless. But anyway, this one has 4 characters. 4 characters only. And it is called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I've been searching for her, but I can't really find... We haven't had any luck finding her yet. She must be down here. Who's afraid of her then? Anyway, before we start, remember there is a shop with things, and there is a Redbubble shop with things, blah, 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 if you want to support us. And like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll jump out from under your bed and scare you witless. Yes. So, we're looking at Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? This is a rather interesting play. It is interesting. It all takes place in one night. It is a Wollsprooknacht. Yes, I think that's it. Or Witch's Night. The whole thing. It's actually sort of, it's got the 3 acts have different names. And, well, one is fun and games. One is that German word that I have trouble pronouncing. And the other one is called exorcism. Now I have a problem with that, but we'll get to that. And anyway, so this is the first American play we've had. Interesting. Don't know how many American plays we're going to do. But this is one that we decided we'd do because it's sort of nightmarish, which seemed perfectly appropriate for this time of year. But anyway, so what is this about? It's about 2 couples. It's about 2 couples who are on a university campus. I didn't know people lived on university campuses, like teaching staff and everything. I mean, wow. But I guess they're a bit different than the symposium. Things must have changed a lot since the days of the symposium. But anyway, they live in a fictional university campus in a fictional city called New Carthage in, I'm guessing, the northeast of America. It doesn't sound very California-y. We get a lot of them down here. Sounds like it comes from the place where they used to burn witches. That's where it sounds like it comes from. Not that they were witches. They're just old ladies. Really sad. And why would anyone care about a bunch of old ladies anyway? Anyway, that's beside the point. That's beside the point. So, we have 2 couples. It is 2 a.m. It's 2 a.m. And George and Martha, who are an a middle-aged couple established at the university. George is in the history department, and Martha is the daughter of the president of the university. And they're married, and they have been asked by her father, the president of the university, so it's probably like being asked by Father Uncle Zeus, to show a good time to a new faculty member called Nick and his wife Honey. He is in the biology department, except Martha has got confused and thinks he's in the maths department. Now, before we get into anything else that happens in this play, I think the big unanswered question of this play is, what's up with the president of the university? Because I'm pretty sure he understands what fun and games with George and Martha mean. So what's his game? What is his game is the question that I'm asking. We never know. But there is no way in a small insular environment that he has no idea what sort of a bacchanal George and Martha have. So I just like to keep that in mind as we go through this. So George and Martha come home from the party at 2 a.m. and they're already drunk. They're all drunk. And Martha springs on George that Honey and Nick coming to see them, like an after party. An after party, like these people need more party. Honestly. These people need more party. And George and Martha have kind of a bickery, squabbly sort of relationship. I recognise that. Hades and I can have that sometimes when it's fun. Sometimes happens. You clash. Doesn't mean anything. But you... I mean, what did he expect? He doesn't have a mouse for a wife. But anyway, so we see that George and Martha have this bickery squabbly marriage. And that Martha says she might mention the kid. And George says, don't do that. I'm warning you, don't do that. We don't understand what this means yet, but it will become important. Now, Nick and Honey turn up and they're uncomfortable. They can see they're also drunk. They're also drunk. Nobody's sober in this thing. And they see that George and Martha are drunk, and Nick doesn't really feel very comfortable in getting involved in other people's feelings. Of course, he doesn't feel particularly comfortable about getting involved in his own feelings, which is something George drags out of him. But over the course of the evening, now this whole thing occurs in George and Martha's house. It is very, very claustrophobic. Everyone is plied with drinks. More and more and more and more drink. Honey throws up at one point and ends up snoozing on the bathroom floor because she's so drunk. I think she gets to a point, they're all well past just drunk. I can think of a word for it, but I don't think I can say it. Let's just say S-faced. That's what they are. And it's during this, in this time of lowered inhibitions, that George and Martha start to pick. And as Nick gets drunker, Honey is pretty oblivious to everything. She's a bit of a ditz. These people come from the Midwest. They've come to this university. It's a leg up for Nick in his career. Meanwhile, George is disappointed in his career because he has not advanced and is not head of the history department. He's in the history department. And Martha is disappointed because hitching her wagon to what she hoped was a rising star has proved to be a fizzer. He's a flop. So George is initially seen as the more sympathetic character. He is more, talking his disappointments to Nick. And he tells Nick this story about a friend who had accidentally killed his mother and his father. And this story has a couple of reiterations. And it's after this that Nick, they're alone because Honey has needed to use the toilet. And Martha takes her off for that. And it is during this that Nick shows his ambition, his supreme ambition, which is to become the biology department. He is sort of a younger reflection of George. And George doesn't like him because he's probably actually more capable of doing what George has failed to do, even with the benefit of having the president of the university's daughter as his wife. Now, Nick, his plan is to, work his way up, and also, in his words, to plough a few relevant wives. Where's that phrase from? Oh, I know. Agrippa says that about in Antony and Cleopatra. He ploughed her and she cropped. Interestingly, neither of the women in this play have cropped. So, despite the ploughing. Now, of course, George is not terribly impressed with this idea that one of the pertinent wives to plough is his own. Now, when Honey returns from the toilet, she lets drop that Martha has mentioned their son. This son is never mentioned by name. And that Martha is upstairs changing into something more comfortable, which means this is going to be a long night. And George knows that. And Nick and Honey are going to discover what a long night this is. While George and Nick have, in one of their conversations, the characters split off, separate from one another several times. The only two who we don't see separate speaking together, and I think this is the playwright's problem, and it is actually the problem that I have with the play as a whole, is we never see Honey and Martha speak to each other. They go off stage. We see Honey and George. We see Nick and George. We see Nick and Martha. We see George and Martha. We never see Honey and Martha. And I think that is an issue. And it ties into another issue that I do have with this. Now, one of the things that, aside from anything, you have to appreciate George and Martha lie all the time, and they're drunk. Except that they are clearly deep alcoholics, and they can keep track of what they're saying while they're drunk. Honey and Nick can't. So you have two confirmed alcoholics plying to much more inexperienced drinkers with liquor in order to pump them for information. George discovers that Nick married Honey for her money and because she had a hysterical pregnancy. You don't hear about those much these days. Hysterical pregnancies are just not something that really crop up. Real pregnancies crop up. Unwanted pregnancies crop up. Difficulties in getting pregnant. But you don't really hear about hysterical pregnancies all that often. Obviously, it must have been much of a more of a thing. But Nick has ploughed her, to use the euphemism of the play, and Honey thinks she's pregnant, so he marries her. And then, poof, it was a hysterical pregnancy and she's now married. And they haven't had any more children. And Nick keeps saying that she's slim-hipped and fragile. And I think this might be a euphemism for she's not able to get pregnant. Which is interesting because Martha is certainly not in the slim-hipped and fragile. But she also describes herself at one point as the Earth Mother. I know all about the Earth Mother. My smother. I have an Earth Mother. It's not something to be wished for. It is definitely not something you would wish for. We don't have a lot of great mothers in my family. I mean, there's the watery gods. They're pretty good at it. But, you know, the watery realm is quite foreign. They have to come to us. We don't go to them. I'm not getting my feet wet for them. Besides, they've all got big staring eyes with no eyelids. They're a bit weird looking. Comes from being underwater. They have to come up to us. You know, it's a bit difficult. We manage it. But they have no real problem. But then again, the water is seen as the primordial originator of life, which is why the mighty Aphrodite came out of the water in a seashell. But we don't have that many great mothers. We have my smother, who really by and large should have more children, given that she is a great fertility goddess. You'd think she'd have a lot more children. But no, she's a bit picky. She won't do it with anyone other than Father Uncle Zeus, and Father Uncle Zeus only did it once with her, and so no. And then there is Auntie Hera and her two boys, Ares and Hephaestus. And now Hephaestus, he has no children. He has none because the mighty Aphrodite is not letting him touch her. Besides, he's a bit more interested in his robots than he is in her. I mean, could you imagine being married to the mighty Aphrodite and you play with boy toys? You play with mechanical women. I mean, you have the supreme goddess of sex and you play with your toys. My cousin brother Hephaestus has some problems. No. Oh, she has one other. We always forget about her. She does. She has Hebe. Everyone forgets about Hebe. We all forget about Hebe because she tripped over once and flashed her bits, and that was the end of her job bearing the cup, and Ganymede got it. Yes. Really unfortunate. She probably should have tied the laces on her sandals. She really hasn't been seen for a long time, poor old Hebe. Anyway, the other one is Ares, of Hera's offspring. She doesn't have many. You'd think she'd have more. But then again, Father Uncle Zeus is off with everything. It's probably why she's so tetchy. But really, 3 is a good number for Olympian gods. There are a lot of us with none. we have careers. Myself and my sister cousin Artemis and my sister cousin Athena, and Auntie Hestia has none. You know, nobody impinges anything on us for not having children. We have careers. Now, the mighty Aphrodite, on the other hand, she is a fertility goddess after all. She's sort of more a fertility goddess than even my mother. She's older. She's been at it a long time. And her and Aries. My word. Who would have thought love and war? Ooh. Love and war. And you should see their children. Woo! They all take after their father. Oof. They all take after their father. Yes. Anyway, that's beside the point. What was I on? Hysterical pregnancies. Yes. Anyway. George has managed to prize this out of Nick. He's also not happy that Martha has said about their son. I keep saying that like this. I know. You're starting to catch on. Takes Nick a while to catch on. Anyway, they regroup again, and again, more liquor, more liquor. This thing is a bacchanal. This is a bacchanal. We have those down here sometimes. You know, we get together and we get the other infernal gods and the cathodic gods like Hermes and Dionysus, and they come down and we have a bit of a party. That's always fun. That's always fun. Best at what? But Dionysus always has the best wine. I don't know what they're drinking, but it's certainly not Dionysian wine. I'm certain it's not that. Seems to be one of those things that's made out of grains. Inferior. Anyway, they play music, and George plays Get the Guest, which consists of him telling Honey all this stuff Nick told him. Because they've already played Humiliate the Host. So now they play Get the Guest. And then they play... Is it time to play Hump the Hostess yet? Well, no, not yet. We have to play Get the Guest. Honey's humiliated. Nick leaves with her. George and Martha declare war. He reminds her, I told you not to mention the kid. This means war. All right, fine. And so Martha proceeds to initiate the Hump the Hostess with music. George originally attempts to stifle this by putting on music that you can't dance to, which Honey decides to do interpretive dance to. And if she can't do her interpretive dance, turns out she doesn't want to dance. So she and George sit and talk while Martha and Nick dance. Honey disappears for a bit. She goes and throws up. And Nick and Martha and George banter around, basically saying, I'm going to take him upstairs. I don't care, says George, reading a book. I'm going to take him upstairs. Go ahead. So she takes him upstairs. Honey actually had fallen asleep in the bathroom at this point. That's where she was. She fell asleep in the bathroom. She'd thrown up earlier, and that allowed another separation between George and Nick to talk. So the women get off-staged a couple of times to allow some of this to happen. She comes back in, and George, she drunkenly, half asleep, drunkenly confesses that she has been getting pregnant, that she doesn't want any children, and she's been making sure that there are no children. And this gives George a horrible, marvelous idea to kill the kid on his 21st birthday. George is obviously not happy that his wife, about what his wife is doing, but it turns out Nick is far too drunk to perform. He can't do it. He can't do it. He said, oh yes, you have potential, but you can't do it. So he becomes the houseboy. George has disappeared and reappears with a bunch of flowers that is pinched from someone's garden. Nick is being humiliated by Martha being called houseboy. Honey again returns because she'd been lying on the bathroom floor again, peeling the label off a bottle. She's really drunk. And George delivers, when he discovers, oh, you know, are you a houseboy or are you a stud? Are you a houseboy or are you a stud? And Nick whines. And Martha actually takes pity on him and says that he was a stud, because it'll hurt George. And Nick is thoroughly humiliated by the idea that he is a houseboy. George finally decides, I'm going to deliver my coup de grace. His coup de grace. And he asks Martha to tell us about your son. Tell us about your son. And Nick and Honey are listening to this long rendition about this son, this beautiful son. And how and the combative, the way that his parents are fighting over him for influence. And then we get the coup de grace. He's dead. A telegram arrived. That's what the chiming was. It was actually George throwing a book at the chimes and that woke up Honey. And he's dead. And Martha is, that's not fair. That's not fair. He's not. Because George has now spoilt her favourite game. This was their game, pretending that they had a son. And supposedly they keep this secret from everybody. And she broke the rules, and so he gets to kill him. These are the rules of engagement between these two. Nick is like, oh, you couldn't have children. And they eventually leave. Honey has decided she would like a child, hearing this and seeing Martha and not really fully understanding what exactly is happening with this interaction. And so they leave, and George and Martha are left alone. And Martha suggests that they could just resurrect him. He's made up after all. It's a game. And George says no. And eventually they go to bed. George ends with singing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which has been throughout the play. And Martha says, I am. So I really want to know who this Virginia Woolf woman is so that I can meet her, because these seem intelligent people. I want to see what's so scary about her. She's got to be down here somewhere if she's that scary. Anyway, so I liked this play, but I did have some issues with it. And my major issue is around the women. Because although the play is theoretically about illusion, and Martha and George's combative relationship breaks down the illusion of Nick thinking that his marriage of convenience and money is going to be completely hunky-dory, that George's is like a mirror to Nick. This is where you're going to be in 12 years time, or however many years time, about, what is he, he's 46, so nearly 20 years time. This is where you will be. You won't be where you think you are. You are going to be washed up, alcoholic, and stuck like I am. And that terrifies Nick. But the illusions around the women are actually what I find is kind of like, really? Really? Why is it so gynocentric? Why is all the disappointments in a woman's life because she couldn't have children? Martha doesn't strike me as a particularly maternal person, alcoholic or not. George doesn't strike me as a person who particularly wants children. If his little story, which we never quite get to that bottom of whether it's true or not, or which version is true or not, is anything to go by. This is a person who keeps telling a story and claims reality of a story in which a child murders both his parents, that he may or may not have done. Accidentally, of course. Neither of these people look like they actually want children. And the accusations they make about each of them and their upbringing seem a lot more pertinent as accusations about their behaviour throughout their marriage towards one another. Martha being overly sexual, of embarrassing George by having houseboys and studs around. George massively disappointing Martha after she has chosen him of all the potential men at the university she could have chosen to marry, or all the potential lives she could potentially have had, so that she can stay in good with her father, so that she can provide him with an heir to his position. And she chose George. And George has no ambition. And George has no drive. And George has no desire to do the schmoozy stuff that you need to do. And that she has tried and tried and tried. And this makes her more outgoing, more gregarious than probably she even wants, which probably fuels the alcohol to produce this. And when George drinks, he becomes more interior, more morose, more quiet, and less likely to put himself forward in a way that would enable him to rise in the university, because he is in the history department. He is not the history department. And I think in particular someone like Martha saw her marriage to George, or what she thought she was getting in her marriage to George, as marrying a rising star, being able to be proud of him, being able to create him in some way, to be in some way mothering to this younger, because he is younger than her. He's about 6 years younger than her. This younger man to nurture him, to bring him up. And this is this is sort of the dynamic that's played out in their argument about the child. I don't think she's all that cut up about being not able to have children. I don't think that's really her big issue. I think perhaps a child is a career that is denied her due to her sex. For George, a child is definitely the book that has denied him, denied that career advancement that he wasn't allowed to publish because Daddy said no. So I think that for me is where the play falls down, because if the only thing that you can say that women regret in their lives is childbearing, I'm sorry, but that really reduces women down to something very small. Something smaller even than Antigone. Antigone might have been an idiot, but she was more than just a baby maker. When your interpretation is circumscribed to such an extent, it is somewhat problematic, I think. The whole play itself is a wonderful nightmare, alcohol-fueled nightmare that you can't escape. And it's claustrophobic and it's terrifying. But I think that there are nightmares that you can't escape that are not just, oh, I couldn't have children. I think that Martha's nightmare has nothing to do with offspring. It has to do with the fact that she herself has potential, and she is having to live out her potential by proxy, and the person she chose to live out her potential by proxy is a flop. He's a flop. And that all the men she's choosing to live out her potential because they have to lick her up to get the courage to go near her. Lick her up to have the courage to cheat on their wives. Lick her up to make that first move, and by the time they've licked up enough courage, houseboy. Houseboy. George at least is not a houseboy. But he is still a flop. He can keep up with her games, but the games are merely distractions when the rest of your life is pretty empty and meaningless, and the rest of their lives are pretty empty and meaningless with the fact that they drink. They are not alcoholic for nothing. That doesn't just happen for kicks. So I think I think Honey definitely has an issue around children. The fact that she could induce a hysterical pregnancy and that she keeps, losing pregnancies, which is why Nick sees her as fragile. She's only 26. She should be fine if she, gets around that hang-up. But she's definitely not a Martha. She's not clever. She's not feisty. She is a mousy little wife. Honey bunny. Martha is far more tragic than Honey. Honey is a sad little wifey who's stuck in a position that she's not really, that doesn't really work, a marriage of convenience, somewhere where maybe she might, this is the early 60s, I'd say by the 70s they'll be divorced, and she might go back to university herself or finish her education, something. Or she might end up having children with Nick, and that might actually bring her out of herself. But Martha's a different kettle of fish. Martha is an intelligent woman who is at a time, she's at 52 in 1962 when this play is set and written, which means that 30 years earlier, it was 1932 when she was 20, or it was the 1920s and 30s and she wasn't afforded the same sorts of education and opportunities that younger women now would have, even in 1962 would have. She has attempted to sublimate those ambitions onto her husband, but her husband has failed her. And so she is tragic. What looks like a deeply combative relationship, which it is, there is a mutual need that got them together in the first place. There is some mutual affection between them, but there's also a massive mutual disappointment in the other, that they are not what the other thought they were. George clearly needs his very strong wife. He needs her. He needs her position as daughter of the president of the university, more or less to keep his job, it seems. Because he's not going to get fired while he's married to her. But I think he also needs her strength, because anything he has achieved is probably because she's pushed him. He might resent her pushing him. And yet, that's what he needs, because he won't push himself. And so they are forced to reckon with this when George kills the son. When George kills the son, they're forced to recognize their own failures and the fact that both of them are, in different ways, flops. And it's sad. It is sad. It's sad to have got to middle life and realize that you have achieved nothing, that there is no legacy. There is no legacy. That is why there is no son. There is no legacy, because there is nothing to come after, because neither of them have achieved anything. And they have been using this child to pretend that they have achieved something, that they have a legacy. I mean, Martha's father is wanting an heir that George can't be. He wants to leave a legacy. Martha wants to leave a legacy, but I don't believe her legacy that she wants to leave is physical offspring of her own body. I think the legacy she wants to leave is in the achievements of her husband, and her husband has failed, and he knows he has failed. But he also, and Martha is a good place to displace his feelings of failure onto, because otherwise he would be completely consumed with self-loathing. And so they fight. And they need each other for that. And they will keep doing this. They will keep doing this. They will come up with some other game. Yes, the son is dead. They can't play that game anymore. But they play games, and George is quick with her games. And so she will come up with a new game, and George will play that game. And they will make their lives livable. And the president of the university will keep sending arrogant young faculty members to George and Martha to scare them witless and make them manageable. So that is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Interesting play. Interesting play. As I said, I think that you have to read something around the edges, because if you read this literally, it's a bit narrow. It makes the ancient Greeks look diverse, and the ancient Greeks are not diverse, let me tell you. So I would say that about it. I do think it's much more allegorical than some a straight reading allows for. I think that you can read it more allegorically, as I have. But I think it's a good play. It is a terrifying play. a terrifying play in its claustrophobia, in its examination of failure, in this clawing out of secrets, out of these naive young people's psyches by these really terrifying older couple who are both antagonistic to one another and at the same time in tune with one another, which is what makes them so difficult to get a handle on, because you can't pit one against the other, because when you think we can pit one against the other because they're fighting, they will gang up on you and go, no, you can't drive a wedge through us. So they're a bizarrely tight couple. They are a bizarrely tight couple, which is why I said they remind me of Hades and myself. The difference is I have a career, and as a goddess, I don't need a legacy. I am eternal. This isn't a problem for us. For us, children are also eternal, and therefore they can just become an embarrassment. Auntie Hera. But anyway, that is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I don't know what we're going to do next. I really should do something with a big ensemble cast, because the Milwaukee Family Players are really, really going to lose it if we don't do something where they can all do something, because these little ones, they get tetchy. Antigone had a chorus, yes, but not really enough big speaking parts. They don't like being chorus. They think it's beneath them as performers to be chorus. So anyway, have to deal with their competing egos. I'll find something. Not sure what, but I will find something. Anyway, that's it for us. Have a happy Halloween. And bye-bye. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.